So welcome everybody to the second coffee talk with Britta, and I'm really excited because we have the amazing Christine Taylor with us today. And Christine and I met, I think, about 2 years ago. We met online. So yay for the online communities that we have here. And she is an amazing storyteller. So she's really an expert on storytelling. And we always talk about stories and how important they are, how they influence us. And I thought we'd bring Christine on, and we're just going to have a really informal coffee talk about stories and how they shape us and how we can stay interested in our own stories, because we keep telling our own stories over and over again. And I've heard from some people, oh my God, it can get so boring. So Christine, let's have coffee, let's chat, and please start by introducing yourself.
Hi. Thank you for the amazing introduction. I now have a lot to live up to, so I will do my very best.
I love it when I do trainings and someone introduces me and says, it's the best training I ever did. And I'm like, sure, no pressure.
I'll just do that again, no worries.
I know. Like that.
Yeah. Easy. Let's see. My name is Christine. I do storytelling expert, and a lot of diversity. I always lose the second word, which is hilarious, but it's diversity and inclusion work, particularly over the last year. It's kind of grown out of doing culture work, and I work with a lot of PhD students and also internationals in figuring out how they can tell their stories. And often that starts with figuring out how to find the stories. And once you find your storytelling, it is usually the easier part, but the finding is hard. So
how did you get into this? Like, how did you become interested in helping people find their stories?
The story I always tell about this is that I'm married to an MD PhD, and I've known him since 2002. It's been a very long time now. And when I first met him, he was doing his PhD, and he would get invited to these conferences, or he'd get a poster presentation. Hundreds of people send in something, and they select half of the 100. And he came home with this poster, and it was huge. It's like the size, they're like double the size of a flipboard chart. And he holds it up. He's like, "Look, what do you think?" And I looked at it, and I was like, "I'm sure there's information there, but I'm not sure
where
he's going to get anything out of it. Like things aren't aligned. The colors are all mixed up. It's too small." And so since then, I've been actively trying to disrupt his process. And about 10 years ago, I started realizing people were talking about storytelling a lot. My background is in literature, so I love stories. And I just enjoyed the work. The process spoke to me. I had issue with the way it was being done in some places, which means I have an opinion, and I wanted to share it. So I got an opportunity to do that in the end of 2016 with the first workshop. And, it was wow, that was great. Ooh, okay, I'll do it again. And so I've basically been doing that ever since.
So you just said people have a hard time finding the story or finding their story. So how do you help someone find the story? I know I ask, like when I do this, I ask tons of questions. I take notes all over the place. Yeah. And then we kind of find the core of what people are sharing with me. What's your process when you help someone do that?
It's very, very similar. It is oftentimes. So there's really kind of two ways to do it, right? Because you can work with someone who is going to ask you all the questions. And if you're lucky, you work with someone who finds you fascinating, which the person you work with should think you're fascinating. And we'll ask all the questions and essentially, hopefully help you rediscover the joy in your story. I talk to PhD students, and if you work with a PhD student in the first year, or maybe the first 6 months of their process, they're kind of excited about what they're doing. You get them in year 3, 4, and they just have no idea why they even started this, and they've lost the magic. And I think that's true for lots of different projects we take on in life. So if you can talk to someone who reminds you of the magic and who's excited about your story, that can help a lot. The other process is to do, a lot of asking yourself questions. I'm a huge advocate of journaling, just going through the process of who do I want to present? How can I present that? Who do I need to be? There's no single story about you. There's the story you need about yourself for this moment. And that you have full permission to have 6 stories about yourself if that's what you need. And so for me, it's often starting with the purpose in the audience and then moving to the story that's going to work for that. Because we all have tons of material.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I always wonder, like, what's like, I always think of my life events, the big life events, and how did they shape me and how did they change my perception? So when my parents separated, like, how did that shape me? When I accidentally took this acting class that I had no idea about, you know, how did that like influence my life? What did I learn from that? When my father passed away, so what did I learn from that? So I always look at the major life events, and I also look at the small events. You know, sometimes just little things happen, and then I think about it and I go, oh my God, that was really profound. I could make a story of this. It doesn't always, for me, have to be this big thing.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that's so a key. I had a conversation with someone yesterday preparing for some speaking I'm going to do in June. And she said to me, but your story is interesting. And I was like, no, my story isn't interesting. Like, the facts of my life are not interesting on their own any more than any human being on earth. But if I can choose the facts and put them together in a way that meets the needs, interests, shared human emotions and experiences of my audience in the moment that they're in, then I'm interesting. And that anyone can do.
Mm-hmm. And this is it's so interesting that you say this, because this is like the link between me and the audience. It's like, this is where we meet, and this is where they go, oh my God, she was so inspiring. And it's not so much what I think what happens, it's how we shape it. Sometimes when I work with someone, they say, we talk about Steve Jobs a lot, and people say, yeah, but if I sold an iPhone, and I always say, it's not the iPhone. I mean, it is a great product, but it's not necessarily just the iPhone. It's the way he shaped the keynotes, the way he spoke, all of that.
The one thing, if I look at Steve Jobs, I see he's his own product. You know,
yeah.
It's a very conscious thing that's happening when he walks out on a stage. The way he dresses, the way he dresses them, the practice for, you know, I'm sure hundreds of hours for his 20-minute presentation. That is a product, and I'm constantly telling people that stories are creations. Stories don't like appear in nature. They're something we shape, and we have to be very active and intentional about the way we do it. And the other thing I'm always telling people is stories are never finished. It's not like writing a book. You don't tell a story and put it away. You tell it one time and you tell it another time, and every single time you tell it, it should change, because
it's different.
Little teeny tiny changes that make our story better all the time.
Yes, and we evolve. I think we as speakers or as human beings, we evolve, we change, our point of view changes. So of course the story changes. Yeah. So when we think about stories, in your opinion, what makes a good story? I mean, this is a very general question, but at least in my opinion, there are certain things that need to be in a story that make it really interesting. So what is that for you?
A good story for me is always a personal story. So I want you to be in the story, not as a character. I want yourself to be in the story. Like, get a little vulnerable with us. You don't have to tell us your secrets, but dare to be a bit of you that isn't the same as everyone else or anyone else's expectations. I want to see that. I want to see also how you feel. I want to know about, you know, I was a little scared. I felt a little stupid. I felt super confident and then I was wrong. Whatever that is, I want to see, you know, you're a real person in there. And I want to see that you are telling the story for me. I am not interested in you telling a story for yourself. I want to know that you're telling a story because you think there's something for me to get out of it. And that is it's always more than getting to know you. There's meaning, there's a shared experience, there's this is what I can do, or how I approach things. That's got to be in there as well. And then, you know, I always go to story structure as a way to put it together, but that's just a delivery mechanism. So
I agree. And I so agree. I always say, how can you unapologetically express who you are? Because it is, I don't know about you, but I am always looking for the person behind the speaker. That's why I love bloopers. I never know how to say this. Like the movies, you know, what went wrong? Because I feel like I get an idea of what the person is really like. And I think we crave for that rawness in a way. It's like, you know, there's a little stain somewhere and we're just looking at the stain, you know, on the shirt. At least I'm like, oh my God, there's a stain, and I feel like drawn to it.
Yeah. But I totally agree. And I actually one of the things that kind of freaks me out is people who you have a conversation with, and then they get up on a stage and someone else comes out and you go,
yeah,
what
just happened? Yeah.
And then I have a trust issue with that, because I think, okay, so if you can flip like that when you go on a stage, who were you when you were talking to me? Where are you actually?
Oh, that is so interesting. I always think, it's a protective mechanism. It's like they're talking to me, they're super relaxed, and then something happens on the way to the stage, or, they hit the live button, and then this is rigidness. And I go, oh my God, there must be some sort of fear, something that's holding them back. I was talking to someone just a couple of days ago, and she said, I'm just so scared I'm not going to sound as smart as I am when I go live, or when I
sound as smart as you are.
Yeah. It's like you are smart. So, but that made her like be so rigid on camera, and she lost all the pleasure of speaking. And I think that's so important when it comes to storytelling as well. It's that, the sensory things like that we need to put into the story.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it is. I worked with someone through some stories. Yes, I worked with some students yesterday, and one of them was going to turn I get up on Monday mornings at 6 a.m. to run, and had this like, well, that's not a story. And I'm like, well, it is a story. And so we worked out how you can turn it into a story. And then you get all the events all set out. You've got a structure. And then what turns it into a real story that people like is, okay, now what you do is you add, how did you feel the first day you went for a run?
Yeah.
Was it like rainy and your shoes didn't fit? And
yes.
What do you remember the moment you remembered that mud comes in through the top of your running shoes? Like those details are what turn the story into something really visceral and wonderful to listen to.
Absolutely. And that's why what you just said, everything is a story in a way, if we allow it to be. Absolutely. And it's those little sensory details where people go, oh my God, I know, it's like, yuck.
But that's like, if there's one thing that we can give people, let's release them from the idea that they don't need a magnificent story.
Yeah.
You do not need a magnificent story. You need a real story, an honest story that tells something about who you are. And you can capture people with that. And you don't have to already be famous or well-known or have a following. You don't need any of those. You need yourself. And the more yourself you are, the more people are going to be drawn to you, because it's actually you.
Yeah. It's that is what creates the connection. But I wish that more people would just find the courage to go, this is me. It doesn't matter what people think. And it's hard.
It's the song.
It's the song. There's a little bit of insider here. We had a live a couple of weeks back with Claudia, and we're talking about how songs shape our lives. And I'm all about music. I have a background in classical music. And Christine said, I asked people to share the favorite song, and Christine shared, I'm getting goosebumps, from what's the Greatest Showman. The Greatest Showman, Hugh Jackman. And she shared this song. What's it called again? I just watched it yesterday. This is me, right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna post it in the comments. It is such an amazing song, and the video to this is just really, this is me, and they're all standing in their power. So it's just so powerful. Like I'm like losing my words right now.
It's incredible. That actual video is when I think they were doing it for producers or something. But it is the most raw performance of that song.
It's
all the emotion that got written into the song was pouring out of her. It's incredible.
And even the cast. I mean, I love watching the cast and how they all got up and they like started moving their bodies and they were just right there. And it was such a powerful thing to witness.
It's the song I play before, like if I have to give a workshop, 10 minutes before the workshop, I come and we have one of these things, and I crank it up really loud and play it, and the kids go, oh, she goes again. But
that's, I mean, songs are stories as well. So that's the power of just showing up, of like giving my full self to whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think like as soon as we step back and go into fear mode or go into protective mode, we lose we lose what stories are really about, which is connection, empathy, creating action.
And I think that what it is it's separating two things. You want to deliver a story that your audience needs or wants. Like you want to take care of your audience that way, but you can't be afraid of what your audience is going to think of you.
Yeah.
And it's separating out those two things. And if they're going to be uncomfortable with you or dislike you, that's going to be a genuine response. And if they're going to be bored, that's going to be a genuine response. And if they're going to love you, that's going to be a genuine response. But they can only respond if you give them yourself to respond to. Otherwise, it's cold. It's sterile.
Yeah. And then it becomes a static. I'm just going to share facts and figures, and I'm deciding to stay safe.
Yeah.
And I always say, even if they don't like it, good. It means that we have some sort of reaction.
That I mean, there's nothing I love better than getting a response form from someone who's like, this was off. I really didn't like this part. And I go, oh, excellent. Thank you for telling me something I can use,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a story about an acting teacher, and she was speaking to people about acting and how she directed a play, The Women of Troy, and there's a really raw sound in their play. One of the women goes, ugh, and it's really coming like from her gut, from her belly. So after the performance, a man came up to her and she said, I hated the play. I hated the play. And she said, well, why? And he said there was this sound. It was, ugh. And I didn't like that sound. And she said, why? And he said, it's a horrible story. He said, a couple of years ago, my daughter was raped and murdered. When the police came to tell me, my wife, I'm crying, my wife made that sound.
Oh, God.
And that's why I hated the play, right? And that's the power of story. So even when sometimes hate something, it might mean we touched on something so incredibly powerful. Which then can maybe turn into some healing moment.
Oh gosh, how amazing that he would share that.
Share that, right?
Yeah.
I know, and that's why stories are so powerful.
Yeah.
Because they connect, they heal, they stir something up.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, like what you said, no story is too small. And if I didn't, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
I'm sorry. It's just evolving.
Like,
yeah.
What happens? but it's you never know what's going to touch people. You never know the thing that you say that's going to touch people. And I've had people come back to me and say, oh, this made a really big impression on me. And I've forgotten the moment.
Yeah.
Because that's the way I am, but because it's just not the same to me as it is to you. And so you I don't know, you got to put it all out there. The Americans, like, you got to let it all hang out with strategically.
Yes.
Strategically. And I think that's the thing I find myself saying over and over again, that I even listen to myself and go, oh, it sounds so awful. Except the truth is I'm extremely strategic in the stories that I tell. I seem to share a lot about my private life. But, I've never put my children's name on social media. I don't put pictures of my kids on social media. Yeah. I don't talk about things that are truly personal. If you look up my social media, you wonder if I'm married because the guy never turns up. So I put people in my stories and I put my life in my stories, but it's very, very carefully selected to serve a particular purpose for a particular audience.
Yes.
And it's not like just, let me tell you everything. No. Even
it's the difference between being personal and being private.
Yeah.
And
please do more about that.
Isn't that amazing? I know it's not. I didn't invent that. Someone said it to me. She said there's this really fine line between your personal, you're sharing things about yourself, and then you're private. And private is really, those are the things you don't want to share. There may be too much even for you to share. Things you want to keep to yourself. And I really like that. I mean, I'm the same way. I hardly ever post any pictures of my kids online. Like when I do, it's from behind, so you can never see their faces. My husband doesn't like social media, so he's kind of like, same as you. Does he even exist? He does. But he's like, don't post that picture. And I'm like, please. He's like, I don't want to be there. So I have to accept that, right? And I also want to accept my children's privacy because they're like 1.5 and 4.5. So they, I don't know, they can't decide yet, I think, to if they want to be on social media or not.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, so it's really powerful. And also, what I go by is, before I share a personal story, I want to make sure I've moved through it in a way that I'm not getting lost in it. So I remember when my dad passed away, for the first months I couldn't even talk about it because I knew I would feel overwhelmed. And I don't know how that would be for my audience, because
you got to differentiate between storytelling and group therapy.
Definitely. Yeah. So what else belongs to a good story, in your opinion? So we have the sensory stuff, like what did it feel like, bringing myself into it, and then you mentioned the structure, which in a way is just
that's just the fun.
That's just
There's also a looseness in telling.
Yeah,
that good stories have, and I've started to use I use Little Red Riding Hood when I teach story structure. So every time I've been in front of a group doing story structure, I do Little Red Riding Hood, which means I tell Little Red Riding Hood to a bunch of adults, which is in itself a bit of a presentation challenge. And I will get, I make them say, and along came the wolf, and I can whatever. So it is in a sense, but what's coming to that, and what makes it, what keeps my audience engaged, because I can see that they are, is that my telling of it is loose and it has changed over time. So sometimes I'm really energetic because I'm having a good time and I'm telling a story. And one time I was telling this story and the wolf jumped into bed in grandma's clothes and he pulled up the covers and he was the first cross-dressing wolf in fairy tale history. I don't know what was in my coffee that day, but it was. That's
I want to know.
And
Tasting allergies.
And if you can bring that looseness into your telling, and in storytelling, you're not trying to regurgitate something you've memorized. There's techniques for keeping track of just the key points and making sure they're in there and then the story will work.
Yes.
And if you can bring that looseness of telling and a little bit of that faith in yourself that you're going to get from the beginning to the end. The path may meander, the words may be a little different. Maybe the hat accidentally changes from green to blue in the end. It's okay. Maybe the audience calls you out for something. Just respond to them. It's staying loose in it. A story isn't a straitjacket.
I so agree. It's like, and to me, I think there's a huge sense of freedom in that, because I don't need to memorize every single word. I have my structure. I personally visualize my structure because that's how I function. And then I know I have the structure, and then I can just fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And who knows, like you said, who knows what's going to happen? But I know I'm going to, like you said, I'm going to make it from the beginning to end. There's no way. I mean, what am I going to do?
Yeah. And then you've got the benefit, because if you're presenting and I've got to hit points 1 through 7, as long as I do that, I've done everything. If something happens in the middle, if somebody asks you a question, if somebody distracts you, all the stuff you can skip because you know what you have to do.
Absolutely.
And so you can be the person who also ends on time, and that's the respect for your audience. There's no well, someone asked me a question, so I need an extra 10 minutes. That's not professional.
Yeah.
So,
and it's also like what you said, like responding to what's going on, as opposed to I'm trying to control the room. I think as soon as we try to control the room, there's fear in there, and I'm losing my sense of joy. Yeah. Like I say, I lose the pleasure of speaking and telling my story.
It's like parenting. You gotta just understand it's gonna go funny, but in the end of the day, everyone will be tucked into bed.
Yeah, it's and parenting always works with me. Yeah, got it. and I think that's how we really stay interested in telling our own story, because we're not like tied to these words. We're not tied to a certain structure. We can just kind of play with whatever is going on. Yeah. We can add things, we can leave them out. And to me, that's the real respect for the audience, because in the end, they're giving me that time, which is so, so precious. So it's my job.
They're creating with you. They are letting you know what works and doesn't. They're giving you constant feedback. It's free coaching for your story every single time you tell it.
I love that.
How to walk your audience.
I love that.
And if you keep that if you keep this sense of like, all right, let's see how it's going to go this time in your storytelling, then you're telling it new every time because you recognize that something different is going to happen with your story this time than that happened last time. You know, I always now add the cross-dressing wolf in my story because I think it's funny. Not every audience thinks it's funny, but you know, I enjoy that. So my audience taught me that works. And the other, you know, to be honest, the other thing is there's some other thing. I think I was thinking it, but it's gone now.
It'll come back, or might not, who knows. But I love the idea of co-creating your story with the audience. That's beautiful, because oftentimes I find we move in, sometimes when I work with a client, and the audience is the enemy subconsciously. I hope, you know, I can control them. I hope nothing bad happens. And when we think about co-creating things with the audience, it becomes this mutual thing, this journey that we're all on.
Yeah.
And that's when the fun comes in.
Exactly. Yeah. I always say storytelling is, if you're really telling a story as opposed to giving a presentation, you may be standing in front of 200 people, but you're having a one-on-one conversation because you're telling your personal story to people who are coming up with a personal emotional reaction to it. And that's the one-on-one connection that's going on.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. I could talk for hours. Wow. We're going to leave it at this. So we're going to do that again. Thank you so much, Christine. I'm going to put your website into the chat so people can find you and look you up and see how amazing you are. And just for everyone watching, we decided that at one point when Christine and I are going to meet and we're going to talk about all the funny stories that happened. Just before we went live, I said, what did I say? I said, I want to keep this really casual. It's like we just pretend we're friends. It's just like, I know you hate my guts, but let's just pretend we like each other. So we pretended to be friends for 30 minutes. This is as much as I can do today.
Okay, but for the record, I think, you know, if you're watching and you wonder how these two women can like sit here and laugh at each other, I've never met Britta. I think we've actually even maybe only ever really interacted on lives and missed connections on Facebook. Because we're like, it's tragically bad. She sends messages like, how about tomorrow? And like the day after tomorrow, I'm like, oh, that would have been great. We've been doing this. Not just one time, okay? And but through every single bit of it from the very first time, you're you. You just can't help yourself. And I definitely can't help myself.
Oh my gosh. We were gonna do this live, I think last week Friday, and on Thursday, no, I think on Friday, I'm like, are we on? And you're like, I thought I confirmed. I'm like, no, you didn't. Let's postpone again.
Yeah, but we're really incredibly professional when it comes to doing the
We're amazing. We're amazing. We rock. So, all right, my love. So, I'm going to put your website in the comments, and everyone watching or watching the replay, let us know any comments, any questions. We're here. We're gonna, we're always up for a story.
Yep.
And talk real soon. Bye.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.